Hello, and welcome back to the Tucker and Crowley Report. Franklin Tucker, senior editor of the Belmontonian, is with me again today, and I am Mike Crowley. So first off, I want to remind our viewers that any opinions or views expressed on the program are those of myself and Franklin Tucker only and do not represent the views of the Belmont Media Center, the town of Belmont, Comcast, or Verizon. All right, so Franklin, let's talk about the news. First up, we have a preliminary budget. What can you tell us?
Well, it came in on time and it came in on budget, as you would say.
Okay.
And not much was talked about the actual numbers. And that's because the request at the very beginning, the very first budget summit, was that the schools have an increase of 5.8%, and the town would have an increase of 2.5%. And this is under a what I know that some people don't call it new, but which they call the revenue first model. And this is the second year they've done it, and this is the first year they really pushed it. And that's basically, what they did is at the beginning of the process, they said, through our modeling, we modeled what the revenue is going to look like, and it's a lot of numbers. They said, this is what this is the numbers we've got for what our revenue is going to be going up next year. So this is what your number has to be. I know that there are a lot of people who disagree with that.
Let me just add to that the extensive modeling on revenue is something relatively new and has come about since we had the release of the Collins Center report. But in terms of the revenue focus of the budget, it's just my view that that's not really something new. Mm-hmm. We've always been limited by revenue. And in a sense, revenue has always been first. It's been what enables the spending.
That's right. But I think what promoters of this new process are saying is that what we're doing is we're front ending everything. Everything's going to be at the very beginning of the process. We're not going to be doing revenue along the way as we've done in the past.
That's true.
I remember that.
That's true.
And so if money comes in now, that money is not going to go to schools or town. It's going to be going to reserve funds.
And one example of that, Franklin, is that the governor's budget increases the allocation for Chapter 70. This is aid for schools. And so the town has benefited by more than $200,000.
Now, in the past, you're correct. In the past, this would have been rightfully, the school committee would rightfully claim it. No longer the case.
Well, they might still rightfully make an attempt to claim it, but the town has decided to set that money aside for future needs.
That's right. And one place that they're putting it in is an override reserve fund, basically, saving money. So when an override does come, they'll have a cushion. So in case you're looking forward to more stuff, I think people say this was a sea change. And let me just tell you what the numbers are. Not many people are talking about the numbers. So the town budget is at $147 million, with schools at 70.6, which is a healthy number to say the least. Okay. Now, and I know that the people who have been promoting the revenue first model, they're rightfully saying, look, it worked. We feel that this is a great way of doing things. It's going to be a little different next year because we're going to have so many more challenges, and that has to do with salaries, and that is going to be we're in contract years, especially with the teachers, and that could be a little squirrely if you decide that this is what your number is, and you find out that that number is not going to be surviving a teacher's contract.
All right. Well, we will have to see what happens there. So the numbers that we have are based on the budget summit that was held last night. That's Thursday, January 23rd, I believe. Right. And so, Franklin, what comes next for the budget? So this clearly is not the end.
No, it is a preliminary budget, but these numbers are pretty much set. This is not. We're not going to see unless something explodes. The town has to pay $10 million on a lawsuit or anything like that. This is pretty much set.
But might we see some movement within the numbers for the town and
Oh, sure. I
the
mean, it is
schools?
moving those numbers around. I think is you can always see something like that. But that $147.4 million budget is pretty much set, and I think
Okay.
no one wants to fool with the budget. But again, things happen.
So the primary thing that happens next on the budget, Franklin, would be what that we move to town meeting. Of course, you have to have the select board vote the financial articles, and you have to have the warrant committee write their report and make their recommendations.
Yeah, I don't think we saw anything or we heard anything from anyone from either the warrant committee or the school committee or the select board.
So we could,
but I will say this: there were members of the school committee who kind of questioned the process. How can you be sure that these projections are good? And I think what you hear from the town administration and also the select board is, look, it worked. So we're gonna continue to do it until and I think they have a lot of faith in their projections.
okay.
Their revenue projections. So what's next is what we're going in February 25th will be the public will have their say at a public meeting on the budget, and on the first day of spring, everything springs eternal. They'll be publishing the final budget, and it will then be presented at the final budget summit on the 27th of March, and then presented in front of town meeting in early May. And as we have known for about 12 years, these days, those right away, just it's a $147 million budget, and it just flies by. It gets approved almost with no objection.
All right. Well, we'll see what happens, and we are looking forward, of course, to all of Belmont's town services being funded in the next year. All right. So, Franklin, next up, we were supposed to have a special town meeting coming up in February. Tell me what's the current.
I was kind of surprised also because I read an updated agenda for Monday's select board meeting, and it said, "Oh, we're moving it." I thought, "Oh no, what happened?" And of course, this is about the special town meeting, which was at first it was going to be February 10th.
Yeah,
it has to do with auxiliary. What is it?
Accessory dwelling unit.
I always use auxiliary. Accessory, and it's basically grandfather and they used to call it grandparents' rooms or stuff like that.
Yeah,
it's
in-law
right.
or in-law dwellings or
yeah.
But there, it's accessory dwelling units are not limited to that.
That's right. Yeah.
And the notion is
that
we increase housing by permitting statewide accessory dwelling units by right. So
and that's why there is going to be delay, and that is that the governor's office has put out new regulations.
Okay.
And instead of trying to go through the regulations, the town council asked for some time, and they decided March 3rd. I should say the town administrator says March 3rd, and it's going to be voted on by the select board on Monday.
Okay, so March 3rd is now the date for our special town meeting. If it runs over, then it will continue on March 5th, but most likely we continue that day, or we finish that day. All right, so up next, let's talk about Belmont branding. Town of Homes has been a brand that has served the town for a long time,
and it's now cursed because when you think about it, Town of Homes means that all your revenue comes from homeowners.
All right, so Franklin, let me ask you: is the next?
No, let me ask you a question. When I say Belmont to you, what's the first image you get?
Oh, town of businesses.
No. When I say, look, when you get the term Big Apple, you think of like the greatest city in the world, New York City, right? I think it is.
Okay.
And when you think of Lexington, you think of the Minuteman,
Yes,
the Minuteman
yes.
statue. And there's been a new branding in San Francisco, and those two images that you see of San Francisco, you'll like, oh, that's San Francisco. It's the Golden Gate Bridge and the pyramid, the Trans-American Pyramid. These are things that people think about and they like. They issue it. In Belmont, I guess just bad sidewalks.
Bad sidewalks. We've got a really interesting town hall.
Right.
We've got a really old Homer house sitting across the street from it.
No, but so you need a brand.
Okay, so
there's something that needs to be there.
So Franklin, is there anything on the table yet, or is this yet to be decided?
It's yet to be decided. The first thing we've heard about this was a couple of months ago, I think the town administrator, Patrice Garvin, said, we have nothing that identifies Belmont as Belmont, and you can see how other towns have moved forward on that and actually done that. I know that in Needham, they spent $50,000 on getting a new image, and the image will be.
What is that image?
It'll be it's a cupola with a weather vane, and that's because cupolas are very well known throughout Needham.
Yeah.
So they said that will be our unifying image. Our unifying color scheme will be yellow or gold and blue, which is the color that the high school sports teams play. So what they now have is they have an image. I think they're getting a motto. They're also changing their problematic city seal. It has to do with the Native American and a colonialist. So I have to change that one. And they're going to now use that image and use that color scheme on everything they have, from stationery to like polos that town workers will wear, and it will be a theme, and it'll be also something that people will recognize. So when they see something coming in their mail with that yellow and with a cupola and that yellow and blue, they'll say, "Oh, that's from the town of Needham." They'll automatically. People will say, "Oh, this is what Needham is. This is coming from Needham. This is what what we expect." It'll be on everything. It'll be on almost everything, and that is whether it's a town vehicle, a city vehicle, I say, and that's what Patrice Garvin would like to see also in Belmont.
So let me ask you this, Franklin: is this costing the town anything?
It's not costing them anything. I mean, it's going to come to the town in a couple of weeks. In fact, the company. That the town would use, and I have it right here. It's I had it here too. Anyway,
but I do want to ask you, Franklin. There's no contract involved. There's no cost.
No, right now nothing has been signed.
Okay.
I mean,
this is just a proposal.
It will come before the board, and so far the board has been relatively supportive of it, and but the issue is that it's going to cost, like I said, in Needham it cost $50,000, and the first cost that will come from the town of Belmont would be $18,000, and which will allow this company, a Belmont company, to do an audit and audit everything, like the DPW. What kind of signage do they use? What kind of what do they have? And then they'll look at that and they'll melt it down basically to
they'll throw everything the town currently uses into a giant mixing bowl.
Right, and and I think the town does have a few images that that can look that they can start to use, and one is our town seal, which is the Roman goddess Pomona, which is the goddess of fruit and trees and things like that.
Because Belmont used to be an agricultural community, believe it or not.
No, it was the nearest. You would get the freshest apples and pears and whatnot from our hothouses, and it would go right down to Faneuil Hall in these big old carts, horse-drawn carts. So that could be something that they could use. They could use the image of the town hall, which is a unique structure,
very unique structure,
and so it will be something that that they will put together. Now, Patrice Garvin said this is not going to be a top-down kind of top-down sort of effort. the company is going to come before the town and the public, and it's going to be the public who basically says which image they would like to see done, and then it will be brought before the select board and approved. And hopefully they want to have that done sooner than later.
So what is the timeline then?
They have, well, it just as with anything, since they don't have a contract, they don't have a precise time frame.
Are we likely to see a new logo on our next town annual report?
Maybe not, but it's coming.
Okay.
If and I think like Elizabeth Dion, the chair of the select board, said, it's she's a little worried that what the perception is of the town spending $18,000 just on the first part of this branding, but she said it is something that you should have a professional look, especially when you're trying to lure in businesses and things like that. You don't want to have this mishmash of what we have right now, and that is a real mishmash. I mean,
So the last thing you said, luring businesses, Franklin, is that a big motivation behind the development of a new branding for the town? That it will aid our economic development?
I don't think we expect it to be the first thing that people will look at from if IKEA comes to Belmont. They're not going to go, oh look, we got a red and white color scheme. No, but it's something that it will show a sense of professionalness, and that's what they said in Needham also. In Needham they were looking at that and they said, look, this is it's almost like saying we've got our act together in this end.
All right, Franklin.
It's nice.
All right, so that's another thing to look forward to, a new brand for Belmont. Next up, Franklin, Police Shield. What is the story here?
Right, Jamie McIsaacs had earlier, I guess in last couple of spending cycles, has asked for shields, professionally made shields. These are clear, transparent.
This is like riot shields?
Yes, but they're bigger. And
because we're anticipating lots of.
No, you know what it is it's that a lot of times when the police go to something like a person has barricaded themselves, they come in there and they want to talk to them, but they want the visibility and
they want to be behind.
And they want to be behind something
in case something is hurled at them.
Anything from hot soup to a person with an AR-16.
Yeah.
And this is and these shields cost a bit of money, and it's about $6,500. And it's hard to put that into your budget.
That's for one shield.
One shield. So the town has
what kind of a shield does that buy us?
A really good one. So what happened is that we have two, but we have 3 patrol cars out every night. So there was one empty one, and it just Jamie thought, this is, so we just have that little gap, and you don't want to have that little gap in safety. So he approached the Allisons, a couple who have been in town for a long time and very prominent members of the town and very prominent supporters of the police department.
Yeah.
And they stepped up and they're buying that shield. So the police officers will be fully protected with those police shields.
All right.
Which is a great little piece of news.
That is good news. All right. So Franklin, up next, let's talk about the future of Belmont's playing fields. What can you tell us?
Well, the working group was created this month, and that's because a large number of residents have been complaining about the fields, and not only just residents, but groups such as youth soccer, youth lacrosse, and people who have dogs. They're saying, the fields look a little run down. We can't play our sports. So let's put up a group that will help decide what we should do with these fields.
And that entails what we should do with them in terms of repair and replacement of. Oh
yeah, it's about how do you take your current fields and make them better and more useful to residents,
as well as how do we enhance scheduling? That's
right, but it's also about, and this is what was put in the group's charge, their mission, and that was think about a turf think about turf, which is,
Okay.
when I talk about turf, I'm talking about the synthetic, synthetic turf, synthetic fields. And I think people understood that there has to be something. A lot of the youth groups have been asking for a synthetic field, and one place they wanted to do it was west of Harris Field, next to the new rink. But that is school property, and the schools have decided that they want that to be an all grass field, and they got money from who built the high school? Who built
Oh, so the
Skanska will help pay for that, right? And because they're using the fields right now as a staging place for all the material that's going into the rink. So that's out. That's wishful thinking if people think they're going to do that.
But there will be thinking about replacing some of the natural turf.
So yeah, let me just say that the working group's first meeting was very enlightening, to say the least. And one of the reasons why is that one of the members of that group, and now the chair of the group, is Mark Valentini. He's the manager. In his day job, he's the manager of operations in Lexington, meaning he takes care of the fields. He knows everything about like a playing field. And in Lexington, they have one section of town just outside of their rink, maybe a quarter mile, I think, and where they have 4 beautiful synthetic fields, turf fields. And he said, we have these great fields. We have fields around. We still don't have enough people. We still don't have enough fields. We in Lexington don't have enough fields. Belmont has one turf field, and that's Harris Field, which is the high school football field, let's say. And we do have another turf field, and that's the rugby practice ground. And now you can't really use that rugby practice ground for playing games, even though it's long enough. And that's because the sidelines are too close to the playing field. And it's just, no one would allow it because it's a danger. So we have one turf field, and what Mark was saying, and Mark was like, I should say Mr. Valentini was giving a master class in what you have to do. And, a lot of people were saying, look, we have to rest the fields. He says, that's the last thing you want to do. Resting the field is just going to take your fields offline. And you're going to have to also, when you put them offline, you better have a high level of maintenance and make sure that no one goes on there. You have to put a fence around it. And he said that's really hard, especially when you have a limited amount of money, such as in Belmont, and and you don't have enough personnel to do the real maintenance that you have to do to put these fields offline. He says, really, there's only one thing that you should think of, and that is try to find a current field and make it a turf field. And that is because a turf field can take abuse. You could put a turf field out there. You could run youth groups 365. I mean, you can't do it and just look outside.
I would just add, Franklin, that, though that may be the direction that this group will be going, there will be plenty of residents who will raise issues about turf.
And I think what we see is already the issue has happened a couple of years ago, and that is because when Mr. Valentini was looking at all the fields, he said the perfect field will be PQ field, and that is right off Trapello Road near the fire station. Across Trapello Road from the fire station. It's a big field. It's a field that you can put 2 basic turf fields in there. So you have then 2 new fields that youth groups can just give it to them. And then that will help the problem, which is just overuse. And right now, it's been determined that our fields are overused by 200 to 400%. That means they're just being trampled on, and you can't give them enough time to come back. Now I know that in the past there's been not really a big effort, but just people were saying, hey, what about PQ as a new turf field? And the residents came out in force and said, no, we don't want a turf field. So you're going to have to and I think this is what Mr. Valentini was saying. We have no options. We don't have great, like in other towns where they have fields, like in Lexington.
Sure.
Lexington has a lot of land, yet they still don't have enough, space. At Belmont, there's really, you can only use your new fields. You can't find other land.
Right.
So if you don't use PQ, you might as well just have try to do it as best you can, which will be as bad as it is now. And
Well,
so there's either you go forward or you stay the same.
well, we'll have to see what happens. I know a lot of residents likely would continue to oppose artificial turf because for environmental concern, as well as these astroturf or
Yeah, don't call it
these artificial turf fields also tend to become heat sinks in hot weather, exacerbating the heat for homes nearby. We'll have to see what happens. And
where do you stand on that?
So we're just reporting the news, Franklin, and making sure that all views, to the extent that we know them, are represented. Next up, Franklin, let's talk about sports and especially girls hockey. What can you tell me?
Girls hockey is just taking off, and it's a great group of girls. They have only one senior, and they are right now at 10 wins, no losses, one tie, and they've been winning games 2-1, 2-1, 2-1. They've been winning games just by the narrowest margin. They have a great goaltender. They have a great defensive line. Some really just first-rate players. And what the coach was worried about with this year is that they were going to lose. They had lost their, I shouldn't say lose. They graduated their best scorer last year, and she was the one who just did all the scoring.
Yeah.
This year, the scoring is just all around. Everybody's scoring, so that shows a real, a great improvement for the team. And they look like they could go and win the Middlesex League for the second year in a row. They might be hard to beat in the playoffs. They may repeat what they did last year and go into the semifinals. So it's a good mix of it's a real young group, but it's also a group that has I believe 4 or 5 8th graders on it. And one of the 8th graders scored the winning goal against a very powerful Arlington team on a breakaway. They're just a real group. They're just a great group. And I should say that other teams are doing very well. Girls basketball is I believe 7-4. We'll see them tonight, and they look like they're getting their act. They've got their act together. With a great center, and it looks like it's going to be it's been a good year so far.
All right, Franklin. Well, thank you, Franklin. And as always, you can find more of Franklin's reporting at belmontonian.com. And be sure to tune in next time. We will see you then.